There's a moment in every person's life when they realize time isn't just passing, it's taking something from them: energy, possibility, the version of themselves they thought they'd always be. And maybe you felt it already. That quiet shift, when your body starts speaking a language you don't want to hear, when you look in the mirror and see someone you're still getting used to, when you realize the person you're becoming isn't the person you imagined you'd be. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if at 60, instead of continuing the slow fade into fragility, your body reversed course? What if the wrinkles began to smooth? What if the energy returned? What if the aches disappeared and the strength came back? What if after spending decades watching yourself age, you suddenly started watching yourself grow young again? This isn't just a fantasy. This is a question about what it means to be human. Because aging isn't just biology. It's identity. It's how we measure our lives. It's how we understand our place in the world. And if that process reversed, everything would change. Not just your body, your mind, your relationships, your purpose, your fears, your hopes. Everything you thought you knew about life would unravel and rebuild itself into something entirely new. Imagine you turn 60 and something shifts. Not dramatically at first, just small things. You notice you're sleeping better. Your joints don't ache as much in the morning. That persistent fatigue you'd accepted as normal begins to lift. You think maybe it's just a good week, a lucky phase. But then weeks turn into months and the changes don't stop. They accelerate. Your skin starts to tighten. Not suddenly, not all at once, but gradually, consistently. Your hair, which had been thinning, starts growing back thicker. The gray begins fading into the color you remember from decades ago. Your energy, which had been rationed carefully throughout each day, starts returning in waves you haven't felt since your 40s, your 30s, even your 20s. At first, it's exhilarating. You feel like you've been given a second chance, like the universe made a mistake and is now correcting it. You start doing things you'd stopped doing. Running, dancing, staying up late without paying for it the next day. You feel lighter, freer, younger, and everyone around you notices. They ask what you're doing differently, what diet you're on, what secret you've discovered. But you don't have an answer, because this isn't something you chose. This is something happening to you, something beyond your control. And that's when the first uncomfortable question surfaces. If you're getting younger, what does that mean? Where does this end? What are you becoming? People think aging backwards would be a gift, and maybe it is. But gifts can be complicated, because aging forward gives you something. Aging backward takes away. It gives you direction. It gives you an ending. It gives you a reason to make peace with who you are and what you've done. But when you age backward, you don't move toward completion. You move toward confusion. Because every year, you're becoming someone you used to be, someone you thought you'd left behind, someone you don't necessarily want to be again. Think about who you were at 55, at 50, at 45. Were those your best years? Were those versions of yourself people you'd want to return to? Or were they versions still figuring things out? Still making mistakes? Still carrying insecurities you've only recently learned to let go of? Because here's the truth most people don't consider. Getting physically younger doesn't erase emotional growth. You might have the body of a 40-year-old, but you still carry the wisdom of 60 years, the memories of 60 years, the losses of 60 years, the relationships that ended, the people who died, the mistakes you made, the regrets you carry. And now you're trapped in a body that doesn't match the weight of your inner world. You look in the mirror and see youth, but you feel ancient. You see possibility, but you feel exhausted. You see a body that's ready to start over, but a mind that's already lived a full life. And that disconnection becomes the hardest part. Not the physical changes, the emotional ones. Imagine you're 65. You've been married for 40 years. Your spouse is aging forward while you're aging backward. At first, they're thrilled. They joke that they married someone who's going to stay young forever. But as years pass, the reality sets in. You're becoming more energetic. They're becoming more tired. You're regaining strength. They're losing it. You're starting to look like their child, and they're starting to look like your parent. The dynamic you built your relationship on begins to shift. Not because the love changed, but because the balance changed. You want to travel. They want to rest. You want to try new things. They want to stay comfortable. You're rediscovering physical intimacy. They're struggling with it. And slowly, quietly, the relationship you thought would last forever starts feeling like two people moving in opposite directions. Not emotionally, not intentionally, but biologically. And biology shapes more than we want to admit. Or imagine your children. They're in their 30s now. They've spent their entire lives watching you age, watching you become the parent who guides them, the parent who's older, wiser, more experienced. But now you're aging backward, and suddenly they're watching you become their peer, their contemporary, and then eventually younger than them. How do they process that? How do they ask you for advice when you look 25? How do they respect your authority when you look like their younger sibling? How do they grieve the loss of a parent who's still alive but no longer occupies the role they need? And maybe this is where it becomes painful. Because reverse aging doesn't just change you, it changes everyone around you. It disrupts every relationship, every expectation, every unspoken agreement about who you're supposed to be at what stage of life. People spend their 60s figuring out what comes next: retirement, legacy, reflection. They ask themselves, what did I build? What did I leave behind? What will people remember about me? They're moving toward a conclusion, an endpoint, a final chapter. But if you're aging backward, there is no final chapter. There's only reversal. You're not moving toward an end. You're moving backward toward a beginning. And that changes everything. Because if you're going to live longer, if you're going to become physically younger, what are you supposed to do with that time? Start a new career, but you've already had one. Build a new family, but you already raised children. Pursue new dreams, but you've already lived through the phase where dreams felt urgent. You're caught between two lives, the life you've already lived and the life you're being forced to live again. And the question that haunts you becomes this: if you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, would you make the same choices? Or would you choose differently? And if you choose differently, does that mean the first version of your life was wasted? Maybe that's the cruelest part of aging backward. It forces you to confront every decision you made with the knowledge that you could make different ones. But the people you loved in the first version are gone. The moments you cherished are unrepeatable. The version of you that existed in those moments doesn't exist anymore. You're being given a second body. But you can't have a second life, not really, because the world moved on without you. And no amount of physical youth can bring back what time already took. There's a certain comfort in aging forward with everyone else. You're all moving at the same pace. You're all experiencing the same stages. You're all facing the same losses. But when you age backward, you become unstuck. You're no longer moving with the current, you're moving against it. And that makes you profoundly alone. Your friends are retiring. You're regaining energy. Your peers are slowing down, you're speeding up, your generation is preparing for the end. You're being pulled back to the beginning, and the gap between you and everyone else widens every year. You try to connect with people your biological age, but they're living a different life. They're building careers, starting families, figuring out who they are. You've already done all of that. You've already lived through those uncertainties, and you can't pretend you haven't. You try to stay connected to people your chronological age, but they're in a different place physically, emotionally, experientially. They're ready to slow down. You're being forced to speed up, and the things that matter to them don't resonate with you anymore. Not because you don't care, but because you're living in two timelines at once, and neither one feels like home. Maybe this is the deepest truth of reverse aging. It doesn't just change your body, it isolates your soul. Because belonging requires synchronization, and you're no longer synchronized with anyone. Not with the young, not with the old, not even with yourself. People assume that if you could age backward, you'd embrace it. You'd celebrate it. You'd treat it like a miracle. But maybe the real question isn't whether it's a miracle, it's whether you get to choose it. Because transformation without consent is just another form of loss. You didn't choose to age forward, but you accepted it, you integrated it into your identity, you learned to find meaning in it. You built a life around the idea that time moves in one direction. That experience accumulates, that wisdom deepens, that every year brings you closer to understanding who you are. But aging backward undoes all of that. It strips away the framework you built your life on. It forces you to redefine yourself in a body that doesn't match your mind. It asks you to live in a way that contradicts everything you thought you knew about being human. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the physical reversal, the philosophical one. Because if aging backward is possible, then what does aging forward mean? If time can reverse, then what does time mean at all? If your body can betray its own trajectory, then what can you trust? And if you can't trust your own biology to follow the rules you thought were absolute, then what else might be uncertain? What else might be unstable? What else might be beyond your control? But maybe, after all the confusion, after all the loss, after all the isolation, something unexpected happens. You stop fighting it. You stop wishing things were different. You stop mourning the life you thought you'd have, and you start asking a different question. If this is what's happening, what can I do with it? If I'm being given more time, even if it's not the kind of time I wanted, what will I build with it? If I'm being pulled backward physically, how do I move forward emotionally? If I can't control my body, how do I reclaim my mind? And maybe that's where the real transformation begins, not in accepting reverse aging, but in choosing how you respond to it. Because you can't stop your body from getting younger, but you can decide what kind of person you become in that younger body. You can choose to live with resentment, or you can choose to live with curiosity. You can choose to hide, or you can choose to be seen. You can choose to disconnect from everyone, or you can find new ways to connect. You can choose to treat this as a curse, or you can treat it as an opportunity to live differently than you did the first time. Not better, not worse, just differently, with more awareness, with more intention, with more understanding of how precious and strange and fleeting every moment really is, because maybe aging backward teaches you something aging forward never could. That life isn't about the direction you're moving, it's about what you do with the movement. That meaning isn't found in reaching an endpoint, it's found in how you navigate the journey. That strength isn't about controlling time. It's about living fully within whatever time you're given. And maybe one day, you'll look back or forward, or wherever you're supposed to look when time no longer makes sense, and you'll realize something powerful. You were never defined by the direction of your aging. You were defined by how you chose to live. And that choice, that one unshakable choice, belongs to you alone. Forward, backward, or somewhere beautifully, impossibly in between.